Not long ago, I made a video about using my favorite travel photography camera and what I believe is the best travel photography lens to reignite my photographic mojo in Brazil. Since I uploaded that video, a couple of months have passed. So do I still think that this is the best possible gear and the only lens that you need? The quick answer is yes and no. I have been using my drone more lately, and I have also used a couple of other lenses. Are there situations that really call for this? That's partly what I'll discuss in this video. In fact, if you want to get to all the technical stuff right away, the gear stuff, then here is the timestamp for that. However, I do highly recommend that you watch the whole video for context. If you've ever watched my channel, then you probably know that I'm not about the technical specs or the pixel peeping. I'm all about real world use of the gear, practical tips, and basically showing you what's possible with that gear. So if you want all of that stuff, then stick around. The thing with travel photography, if you want to do it organically, meaning you're not going after predetermined shots and predetermined places, then I have to say that inspiration and interesting subjects, they come and they go. Sometimes it's a whole wave of inspiration like I had during my time in Bahia. Other times there are more subtle moments, more spread out and away from each other. And there are also moments when the photogenic moments are so thinly spread that you wonder if it's worth bothering at all. It's really up to you to decide whether you want to stay engaged and to remain in that photography mode. This is actually something that I keep being reminded of even after 20 years as a professional. In my case, after having my passion, my love for photography and the desire to create reawakened in Bahia, I didn't just want to put photography aside. As we left Bahia and made our way up the coast, there were more photogenic villages. I kept shooting. These were beautiful places. However, gradually I did find myself slipping out of that photography mode. You know, there's always this battle. It's a struggle. Whenever you're not traveling solely for photography, and especially when family's with you, you're constantly kind of torn between two ideas. Should I make photos at every opportunity and bring my camera everywhere? Should I be in that photography mode? Should I be capturing moments but potentially missing out on enjoying them? Or should I just save a life without the distractions? Now, photography is my passion. It is a huge part of my life. But for me, this struggle seems absolutely unavoidable. And I love photography, but sometimes I do want to just experience life without a camera. So we were having an incredible journey as we traveled up the coast of Brazil, and sometimes I did choose to leave the camera behind to simply enjoy the moment. But then after a while I noticed that I wasn't making any photographs at all. So I told myself, surely I can find a balance. I can enjoy, not stress about my camera, and capture at least some of the beautiful moments around me. So that's what I started doing, documenting bits and pieces of our journey. Now, there is one thing that I find really effective to keep myself engaged creatively. This is when I am in beautiful places and when there's no culture, no people, no traditions around, when I'm in nature. In these cases, I fly the drone. Capturing the places where I'm traveling with a drone helps me feed my creative fire. Not fully, because for me nothing matches that rush of photographing people, meeting people, interacting with strangers. But at least to some extent, photographing, filming the incredible places that I visit with a drone, to some extent, it does the job. And so we kept traveling, having fun. I was making photos here and there, and flying the drone, and then we reached the beautiful historical town of Olinda in Pernambuco. Olinda is amazing to fly above. From the sky, you can see the stunning contrast between the historical colonial part of Olinda and the modern city of Recife in the background. In general, though, Olinda falls into the category of very beautiful towns, polished for tourism, but outside of festival times, there's not that much going on for the kind of photography that I do. Up to this point, I stayed engaged and in photography mode the best that I could, frustrating as it was not having the same kinds of subjects that I had in parts of Bahia. But in Pernambuco, I was particularly eager to photograph again because I knew that the area was very famous for its culture. I just had to find it. And it's funny how things start to work out once you set your mind on something. I visited a cultural center. A very friendly woman who worked there shared extensive information that was very helpful to somebody like me who is interested in photographing culture in Brazil. Coincidentally, in the same place, I also met an old school photographer who introduced me to the tradition of Maracatu. With this new info, I started mentioning my interest in photographing Maracatu to pretty much everyone that I talked to. At the very least, this was a great way to practice my Portuguese, and at best, I could maybe potentially get some leads. One day at an ice cream shop, of all places, probably the best ice cream that I had in all of Brazil, by the way. Here it is on the map, in case you're interested. Well, at this shop, I mentioned Maracatu to the owner. Turns out that he knows a photographer who specializes in Maracatu. The guy also shoots for his ice cream shop and for his sister's fashion brand. The photographer, Hugo, comes over, he shares some details about a Maracatu event that's happening that weekend, and he says, I'm going over there too. Wow, so things just kind of fell into place.
Maracatu is a traditional Afro-Brazilian cultural expression from Pernambuco. African rhythms, indigenous influences, and some Portuguese elements too. It's especially big during Carnival. This was not Carnival. Here, two teams arrive at a venue and there was this kind of almost warlike parade.
What was to follow was actually a rehearsal for later on in the year. A chance for two teams to do this sort of a battle.
Now, what happens is different team members face off. They create improvised rhymes and witty, humorous insults within certain boundaries. They say something, then everyone reacts and dances, and then the opponent does the same.
The event started late in the evening and it would last until sunrise. Now, I couldn't stay up all night, but I did make sure to wake up about an hour before the event ended.
In the final moments, the pace picks up and the exchanges become more frequent. The final people on stage seem like the team captains.
I should mention that each team brought a bus full of supporters from their communities.
Important because the winner would be determined by who got the loudest reactions. More supporters, clearly more cheers. As you can probably gather, the whole thing was pretty disorientating and chaotic. Thankfully, Brazilians really embrace photography. At events like these, they welcome you. Instead of telling me something like, hey, get the hell out of my way, I can't see, I was usually guided to a spot for a better view.
As amazing, as fascinating as I thought this event was, I so want to see it closer to Carnival time. Definitely check out Hugo's Instagram for more Maracatu images.
This team won. The sun rose, both teams paraded around the streets one last time, and finally headed back to their communities.
Hey, just wanted to make this brief interjection and a very quick word about my most important travel photography course. As you're watching this video and seeing all the images, you may be wondering, well, how do I make photos like these? I've been doing this kind of photography, travel and documentary for almost 20 years. And over this time, I have developed my own approach and my own unique method. It's all about photos that go beyond only illustrating what's in the scene, about making photos that stand out from the masses, photos that communicate a sense of place, mood, photos that evoke a strong sense of story. I've built my entire photographic career on using this approach and this method. And I know that if you'll try it, it'll absolutely revolutionize your photography. Now, that might sound like a very loud and exaggerated statement, but I stand by it completely. And you don't have to want to be a professional to get something out of this course. If you try my approach, my method, you will change your outlook on photography, and photography will become more fun, more interesting. It'll be more engaging. It will be more challenging in a very fun way, and the whole process will just become so much more rewarding. Anyway, if this interests you, then the link with all of the info is in the description below. There's also a discount code. I believe it's for 30%. And that's about it. Back to the video.
From Pernambuco, our plan was to continue up the coast, enjoying the seaside and fishing villages, all the way to São Luís in Maranhão.
After that Maracatu shoot, I fell out of having something specific to photograph, and I again succumbed to the temptation of simply enjoying life. We savored the beaches, snorkeling, and just living in the moment. Our original plan to just keep going up the coast did have to change when we reached Fortaleza. It started to rain, heavily and very frequently. The ocean became murky, and with no photographic opportunities and no end to the rains in sight, we decided to head towards the interior of Brazil.
We drove towards Chapada das Mesas, an area with amazing natural attractions and dry, sunny weather. A few stops along the way because the distances we had to cover were huge and our time was limited.
I feel like I just have to say one thing here. Even though I am a photographer, often I am quite jealous of writers. Do you ever feel the same? You'll know what I mean in just a bit.
On our drive through Piauí and parts of Maranhão, I only got the drone footage that you're seeing and photos of this man, even though this region visually is very special.
There's this cowboy culture, and I came across so many scenes that kind of felt like they were theater sets. Imagine a clay house, a grandma peeking out the window, the grandfather sitting on the porch, and children with their bicycles at the front. It was so photogenic. But these scenes were along highways, and I had to cover absolutely huge distances, so I felt a little bit too burnt out and too emotionally unengaged to initiate conversations. So I shot nothing. And this is where it would be great to be a writer. Writers can bring what they see to life and write about it later, after the fact. And this way, a moment is captured forever. Now, remembering that journey, I really regret not making photos. But unlike a writer, I can't do anything about it after I've left.
So, Chapada das Mesas. Another amazing place, a special place. These crazy big rock formations. We visited some stunning spots. At times, it was again very easy to forget about photography here. I mean, how often do you get to swim in a clear, natural pool amidst cliffs and rock formations? But I realized that here, since I was mostly visiting natural places, I might not have the culture and the characters that I usually look for. To stay in that creative photography mode, I had to shoot what was there. I didn't need to go hardcore filming absolutely everything, but I could still do enough to keep my creative juices flowing. For a few days, we stayed in a beautiful campsite with a creek forming a natural bath. We visited waterfalls. Again, just an amazing region. Brazil keeps surprising me. It's so much more than I had imagined.
From Chapada das Mesas, we continued to 𝗧ão 𝗶𝗶.
The updated plan was to head south through the interior of Brazil towards the border with Argentina, since our visa was running out and we had to leave the country soon. But we still did have time to make some quick stops.
So, 𝗧ão 𝗶𝗶, another stunning area where more natural wonders awaited. Again, this area didn't have much of the main stuff that I love to photograph. But by this stage, I accepted this and found a nice balance between enjoying, absorbing my surroundings, and still making some photos.
Another amazing lake, more water fun, more pleasures for the body and the soul. One thing I had missed in Brazil until this point was staying in really isolated places, away from everyone, like this place. Usually there are people everywhere, and much of the land in Brazil is privately owned. Being completely alone in nature was rare in Brazil, especially if that area was beautiful. But I love these experiences. Getting out at night to make photos or time lapses in the morning. I finally got a little dose of this.
We headed further south.
Many kilometers later, we made a pleasant stop by a river. Brazil really seems to be the country of water to me.
We then entered Bahia again.
The first night back was spent next to a spectacular waterfall. Yep, definitely the country of water. I admit I am spoiled by beautiful places, but I never tire of them. Each visit like this recharges and inspires me creatively, even if I'm not photographing people and culture. The next day we reached Chapada Diamantina, translated as the Diamond Plateau, named for its historical significance as a diamond source, until the government shifted focus to preserving the nature in the area for future generations.
Chapada Diamantina has a unique culture.
We arrived at the beginning of Sao Joao celebrations, and on our first night we came across a random village celebration that was organized by teachers and students of the village. A pleasant surprise. Then we had a few rainy days in Vale do Capão, so we didn't stay long and moved on to explore more of the Diamantina Plateau. More waterfalls and just more beautiful nature. We arrived at the remote but incredibly atmospheric village called Igatu. Once again, I felt excited and alive photographically. The celebrations were small scale but really photogenic. After not having much people, culture and traditions to photograph for a while, I appreciated it so much more. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, and I just love when things click naturally like that. We spent my birthday hiking to some natural pools. It was one of my most pleasant birthdays in recent memory. More water and waterfalls followed. We've lost count of all the waterfalls by now. And while I enjoy them so much, I did start feeling a bit repetitive with my photographs.
One day I looked at the calendar and at the distance that we still had to cover to get to the border with Argentina, and I realized that things were getting a little tight if we were to make it on time. We had to leave again.
So we kept driving south through a region called Minas Gerais. We only got a quick glimpse of some of its picturesque colonial towns. Like Chapada Diamantina, Minas Gerais is a former diamond mining region. A lot of that diamond money was invested in the churches and the buildings here. And the towns have stayed much the same as they were 200 years ago. Minas Gerais is also a place of stunning natural scenery. Throughout our Brazil trip, I hadn't shot much drone footage like this, driving the camper through these special kinds of landscapes. So I thought, why not? As you might have guessed, there were more waterfalls too. And there were more very photogenic spots, different from elsewhere, worth exploring in more detail. This is definitely another area that I'd love to come back to without having to rush.
But that's about it. That concludes our journey as far as photography goes. As we crossed from Minas Gerais into Sao Paulo, the scenery got incredibly boring.
Just soy and corn plantations and industry, pretty much all the way to the border with Argentina.
Now, as promised, let's talk about the technical side of things. The gear, my kit. Is my camera still enough? Is one lens enough? First, the camera, the Sony a7C II. I still plan to make a detailed review of my experiences with this camera. It's not perfect, but overall, I find it fantastic. It's small, the autofocus is great, and the touch screen is very responsive here. While for photography, I prefer a simpler screen that kind of flips out like this rather than flip out, I'd still definitely rather take this rather than something that doesn't flip out at all. In documenting Maracatu in Pernambuco and a few other cases, I loved that it's a great hybrid camera. I could shoot high-resolution images and video at 10-bit, which was super convenient. So the camera was definitely enough, and after about 6-7 months, it's holding up very nicely. Now the 35mm lens. Was it enough? Well, I did also use the 24-70 f2.8 and the 24-105 f4. Why? Since in the last video I did mention that I never felt limited by the 35mm. However, there are exceptions, like festivals and special events, like Maracatu, where you can't physically get close to your subjects. Without a longer lens, you're limited in the shots that you can get. Why though did I use this 24-105? Remember, it is an f4. So honestly, it's actually just because this is the longest Sony lens that I have in my kit. It's an amazing lens for video and it's good enough for photos when I need more reach. I have longer lenses for my Panasonic Lumix G9, but in a dark setting like this, a micro four thirds camera just wasn't useful. I would have loved to have a longer focal length, but I don't use long lenses in the dark enough to justify something like a Sony 70-200 f2.8. Could I have managed with only the 35mm? Probably, but I would have had far less variety of shots. Now, that could have been a fun creative challenge, but I had those other lenses and I didn't have to carry them with me. I was parked right there next to the event, so it just made a lot of sense. As you've seen, I flew my drone quite a bit over this period of time. And a drone, in a way, is like another lens, one which offers a totally different perspective. For me, a drone is actually more important than longer lenses. The drone photos kept me creatively engaged in beautiful surroundings, and I love capturing videos of our car driving through these spaces. Drone photos and footage add a whole new dimension. Plus, it's just fun to fly the drone and to explore the world from above. But back to the 35mm. I do want to say something. Apart from those Maracatu images and a few photos of Mia, I did mostly use the 35mm lens. Skeptics can say what they want, but for what I do, it's a proven lens. It's very versatile. And if I am going out with only one lens, this is the one I'd choose. Of course, the main reason is its size and weight. If I were to have a smaller 24-70 and not this big, bulky thing, then, well, I'd take that in a heartbeat. But with things as they are, it's 35mm all the way. If I didn't have this 35mm, if I had to carry this big 24-70 all the time, then I don't know how many photos I'd actually have to show you right now as part of this video. You may have already picked up on a couple of important lessons that, let's say, I was reminded of in Brazil. The first, and something that I always emphasize, you have to make a conscious effort to make photos. You need to put things aside and sometimes just suck it up and do it. Think of it this way. At the end of the day, you could be wishing that you made a photo of something amazing, or you could be looking at the photos that you actually made, working on them in your editing app. You could be studying what you did right, what you did wrong, so learning, or you could just be feeling really satisfied from what you've created. So on the one hand, photos, on the other hand, only memories. Now for me, only memories are not enough. You may be different, but anyway, that's the first lesson. The next lesson is that once you make the effort and consciously decide to focus on photography, then let it manifest. And this isn't about something mystical. Simply put, share your passion with others. In Brazil, it's quite easy because people are curious and they're interested in you, but in other places I've also learned to talk about my interests so that people know what I'm into. You just never know who might provide a lead, like the ice cream shop owner essentially led me to photograph the Maracatu tradition. And would I have ever expected that? No. Talking about your interests can open doors and lead to unique opportunities and access. So it's essential to keep this in mind, especially if you're photographing in an organic way, meaning you're moving from place to place and looking for subjects to photograph rather than being sent on an assignment within a limited period of time. But even if you are on a set schedule, then random conversations can lead you to uncover some hidden gems and some pretty unique photographs. Anyway, I feel like this video has been long enough. Thank you so much for your time. I'm actually not in Brazil anymore. I'm in Argentina, missing Brazil dearly, but I will be back there either towards the end of this year or early next year, just around Carnival time. Right now, my parents are actually visiting us, so I'll be spending time with them. More videos are coming up though, so don't worry. But for now, it's goodbye.